anything that we talked about, we went around the room and we talked about thankfulness, didn't we?
Yeah.
We were thankful for different things. Well, tonight, I'm going to talk to you about this man. His name is Naaman. And the story is found in 2 Kings chapter 5. Naaman healed of leprosy. Okay, so at the end of our meeting, one more thing we will be thankful for is that we didn't have leprosy, or we don't have leprosy, because I got some interesting stuff to cover with you. Phyllis did a lot of research a while back, and so let's just dig into Naaman. Does anybody remember Naaman? Do they know anything about Naaman? Y'all remember anything about him in 2 Kings?
Was he the one that was Esther's uncle? No, that's a different story. Naaman. I don't know.
He was the captain. Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria. He was a great man with his master and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance into Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor. But he had leprosy. Okay, does anybody know what leprosy is? You've heard of it, though, haven't you?
It's a skin disease.
It is a skin disease, and it affects. I got this picture. I'll pass around and let y'all look at it of a man that's got leprosy, and it's like she said. It's like pieces of the skin would break off. It would start as like a flat red sore, and it would have boils. Sometimes it would be like a boil. Sometimes it would have hair in it. It would come on your face. You could lose your eyebrow. Just different things. It was horrible.
Well, back it wasn't in the Bible days. They were shunned.
That's right. Yeah, she's right. They would have to. There were certain things that they had to do if they had leprosy. They had to live out in what we would call colonies. They had to live outside the city. They would have to cover themselves. If we came close to them, if somebody came close to them, they would have to say unclean, unclean. They would have to let people know that they had this common disease. And leprosy was a common disease among the Jews. It could affect men, women. It could actually get in houses. It could get into garments. And it was an incurable disease. It's called out in 2 Kings that it's incurable. Sometimes it was hereditary. Often began, like I said a few minutes ago, a bright red spot. And if we had a lot of time tonight, we could go back and we could dig through the Old Testament, and it was certain things that people had to do. It was certain, if you suspected you had leprosy, you had to go before the priest, and the priest would have to deem you as unclean or cured or so forth. It turned your skin white. Turn your hair white or yellow, and the priest would have to examine the people. If it was suspected you had it, you'd have to be shut up for 7 days. They had to approve. The priest actually approved whether you were healed or not contagious, or didn't have it. Of course, like Betty said, they were separated from others. They pretty much associated together because they were shunned from other people. They dwelt in a separate house. They were cut off from God's house. They were excluded from the priest's office. They had to have their heads bare, clothes rent, and they had to have their lip covered, and to cry unclean when approached. That's just some of the things. So as we go in and we study Naaman today, this is some of the stuff that he had. He was, even though he was a mighty man, he was a mighty fighting man. He was like the general. I think in the New International Version, they call him like the general of this army, of this king of Aram. Okay. Now Naaman, as I mentioned a while ago, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and honorable, because by him the Lord had given great deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor, but what did he have wrong with him? He was a leper. He did have one thing against him. And the Syrians, what happened is the Syrians had gone out by companies and brought away captive into the land. They brought an Israel maid, and she was waiting on Naaman's wife. So she was a slave for Naaman's wife. Okay, so what she said is she saw that her master had this disease, this leprosy, and she said to Naaman's wife, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." Okay, as we read on in a few minutes, we'll find out who do we think was in Samaria? Well, there's a man of God down there in Samaria, and it just so happens that it's Elisha. He's down there. If you remember the story of Elijah and Elisha, this story takes place right after Elijah is called up into the clouds. Okay, so Naaman went to his master, which is who? The king of Aram. Aram. So he goes to his master and he said, this girl that was brought out of Syria said, "I need to go see this prophet in Israel. There's somebody down there in Israel that can cure me of this dreaded disease." So what does the king say? The king says, "By all means, go there. I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king read, "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you, so that you may cure him of his leprosy." So what we got going on here is we got the king of Syria and we've got the king of Israel. The king of Syria writes this letter and is expecting the king of Israel to make sure that Naaman comes back home cured of his disease. And so the king of Israel, he's like, "Oh no." Okay, so let's see what he says. As soon as the king of Israel read this letter, he tore his robes and said, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? What does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he is trying to pick fault with me." Okay, so the king down here in Israel gets his message from the king of Syria. And he's like, "Oh, this guy's trying to pick a fight. He wants to go to war with me." Because the king of Israel said, I can't cure this man. No matter if he's got all this silver and these shekels of gold and clothing, I still can't cure him. So he's like, he's trying to pick a fight with me. Okay, let's look down in if you follow along, let's look down in verse 8. "And it was so when Elisha happened to be living down where? In Samaria. The man of God had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, and he sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know there is a prophet in Israel." So going back to remember, this little slave girl, she had been taken from Israel into Syria, and now she's serving Naaman's family, Naaman's wife. So she said, instead of her being bitter and angry about being taken hostile from her country, she's telling Naaman, gets word to Naaman that he needs to go to Israel. He needs to go see the prophet in Israel. So Elisha is a prophet, and he's saying, "Oh, okay, so somebody's come to be healed," and the king is upset because the king don't understand. He can't heal him, but what does he do? He tells the king, he says, "Hey, I don't know, they didn't tell in the studies that I saw today, it didn't tell who the king was, but Elisha said, 'Hey, king, don't fear. Send him down here.'" So in verse 9, so Naaman came with his horses and his chariot, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. Okay? So he's got his men with him, he's got his horses, and he's got his chariot. And he shows up, this mighty man of valor, this general in the Syrian army, shows up at Elisha's house. And Elisha, he didn't even go out there. Elisha sent a messenger unto Naaman, saying, Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall again come to thee, and thou shalt be clean. Thou shalt be healed. Okay? So, you know, as we look in verse 11, but Naaman was wroth and went away and said, I thought he would surely come out to me. I'm the great man of valor. Surely Elisha would have gotten up and come out to me and stand and call in the name of his Lord God and strike his hand over the place and recover the leper. Well, it didn't work like that. Okay, so Naaman's gone there. He's expecting one thing to happen. God's leading Elisha to send, tell him, hey, go down here to this Jordan River and clean, dip 7 times. Wash 7 times in the Jordan River. Okay, so Naaman, he's mad. He storms off. He thinks he should have been treated and approached better than that. And so he's still going on and on. In verse 12, are not Abner and Pharpar rivers of Damascus, are they not better? Are they not better than this Jordan? How, he's like got that attitude, how dare send me to Jordan? Send me to one of these nice, these nice, pretty lakes or these nice rivers in Damascus. Because his water's better than Israel. I guess this thing he is. Are they not better, all the rivers of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. He was, we talked about this disease. He's got this, I don't know if that picture's coming around to everybody, but he's got this disease. It's like these scales and big boils and stuff sticking out of him. He's shunned. He's just in a bad way. And apparently the condition of his skin and his body, he's willing to risk not being healed because he's mad, because it's like he wants to pick the river that he gets to wash in. But that's not the way. And sometimes that's the way we are with God. We want God to fix this thing, but God, let me tell you how to fix it. Let me give you some suggestions on this. I want it fixed, but these are the steps I want it fixed in. Well, it can't be that. If God tells us to, go to the Jordan, we need to go to the Jordan. So Naaman, when he came down, he brought some servants with him, and he brought his chariot and his horses. And so one of his servants, well, it says, and his servants came near and spoke to him and said, My father, if the prophet had bid thee to do something great, wouldst thou not have done it? How much rather then, when he said to thee, Wash and be clean? That's all he had to do, was wash and be clean. Something that simple. And it made him mad, because all he had to do was wash and be clean. He wanted to come out and have this big array and pray for him and call on God. I guess he just wasn't thinking he would have to go to the river and be washed 7 times. Then he went down. After his servants talked to him, I guess he come back to his senses a little bit. Maybe he's sitting there and he's like, I leave mad. If I don't go to Jordan, I leave with all this skin disease and misery that I've got.